They went on a luxury cruise using my past help and never invited me. When I asked why, Dad said, "Why would we bring the outsider?" I paused and replied, "Noted." The next morning, Mom left a voicemail. "We're waiting on the money." Hours later, the cruise line froze their account. Security escorted them off the ship. 17 missed calls. 42 texts. One came from a police number. I found out from Instagram. A photo of my mom, Dad, and my younger brother Matt, all grinning on the deck of a luxury cruise ship, champagne flutes in hand, matching white outfits like they were auditioning for some reality show about perfect families. The caption read, "Bon voyage. Family trip of a lifetime." Funny. No one had told me anything. I stared at the screen for a few minutes, not sure whether to laugh or just shut my phone off. 3 weeks earlier, I'd wired my dad $3,200 to help pay off his second mortgage again. 2 weeks ago, I'd Venmo'd Matt $400 for textbooks, even though he dropped out of community college last semester. And just 5 days ago, my mom called crying because she didn't know how they'd afford the utilities this winter. Yet somehow, they had money for a 7-day luxury cruise to the Caribbean. And I hadn't even been invited. I called, more out of morbid curiosity than anything. Dad picked up on the third ring. "Oh," he said when he heard my voice. "No, hello. No, hey, how are you?" Just, "Oh. Looks like you guys made it on board okay," I said, keeping my tone even. There was a pause. A long one. Then he said, "Yeah, we figured we deserved a break. You know? Things have been hard this year." "For sure," I said. "And I guess I'm not family enough for this one?" His response was so casual it felt rehearsed. Why would we bring the outsider? I didn't respond right away. I just let it hang there. Then I said, "Noted," and hung up. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was all sweet and breathy, the same voice she used when she wanted something. "Honey, we're waiting on the money. Can you please send it today? The ship's internet is spotty, and we still need to pay for the excursions." That was when something snapped in me. An hour later, I was on the cruise line's website. I still had the receipt from when I'd paid off their last-minute balance. They'd used my card for the deposit, just temporarily. Remember? Turns out that gives you rights. By noon, their on-ship account was frozen. By 2 p.m., they were escorted off the boat by security in front of other guests, shouting about family betrayal and how they'd be suing someone. By 5 p.m., I had 17 missed calls, 42 texts, and one voicemail from a number listed under local PD. I played it on speaker. The voice was deep, firm, and unfamiliar. "This is Officer Reynolds from the Port Authority. We need to speak with you regarding a financial matter involving your family. Please return the call as soon as possible." I sat back in my chair, phone in hand. And for the first time in years, I smiled. I should have known this was coming. It didn't start with the cruise. That was just the cherry on top. The rot had been growing for years. I just kept ignoring it. It started small. Or at least it seemed that way. I got my first real job out of college and moved into a tiny apartment. My dad called me the next day asking if I could spot them for a surprise plumbing repair. "Just for a couple weeks," he'd said. "We'll pay you back as soon as we can." I never saw a cent. Then it was Matt. He flunked out of school his second semester, but kept calling it a temporary leave to figure things out. I paid for those semesters, by the way. All 3 of them. Tuition, books, rent near campus, all of it. I even bought him a laptop when his old one died because he spilled Red Bull on it trying to finish a paper he never wrote. At first, I told myself it was what good sons did. What big brothers did. I didn't grow up with a sense of security, so maybe I just wanted to be the person I needed when I was younger. But the thing is, they never stopped asking. And it was never, "Thank you." It was always, "You got us," right? That's when I realized I wasn't helping my family. I was funding them. They weren't struggling. Not really. They just didn't want to dip into their savings. Dad still went golfing every weekend. Mom got her hair colored like clockwork. Matt had the latest phone, AirPods, and a gym membership with a smoothie bar. Meanwhile, I was living off ramen and chasing deadlines. They knew I wouldn't say no. The guilt was the bait. The silence was the punishment. And the worst part? They didn't even try to pretend they respected me. Once, when I brought up cutting back, my dad chuckled, and said, "You're not married. No kids. What else are you going to spend money on?" Matt was worse. He acted like my help was his birthright. "You're just jealous because I'm the golden child," he once said, half joking, but not really. Mom didn't even correct him. She laughed. Actually laughed. Looking back, I think the turning point came last Thanksgiving. We were all at my parents' place. I had picked up the entire grocery bill, over $400. Cooked half the food, too. Matt showed up late, smelling like weed, and gave everyone novelty socks he probably grabbed last minute from a gas station. At dinner, when the conversation turned to finances, Matt leaned back in his chair, grinned, and said, "Well, at least I don't live alone and sad like someone I know." He looked straight at me. The room laughed. Dad actually clapped the table. "Come on, don't be mean," he said, without looking at me. "Your brother helps out a lot." Helps out. Like I was a background character in their life story. A helpful extra with no arc. That night, while helping clean up, I overheard them in the kitchen. "Mom, he's always so dramatic. If he's not going to start his own family, at least he can support ours. Matt, I swear, sometimes I think he stays single on purpose, more money for us." They didn't know I was standing in the hallway. And I didn't say anything. I wish I could tell you I confronted them right then. But I didn't. I went home, sat in my car for an hour, and tried to convince myself I was overreacting. The worst manipulations are the quiet ones. The ones you don't even realize are happening until you're neck deep and drowning. But the final blow came 2 weeks before the cruise. Mom had called again. Said she needed a small boost to help pay Matt's rent. I sent it without thinking. Then I checked my brother's Instagram story. He was at a rooftop bar in downtown Miami. 2 nights in a row. Caption, deserved. The next morning, I asked him where the money had gone. He replied, "I used it to breathe." That's okay, right? Then added, "Also, it's not your business how I manage my life. You sound like Dad when you get like this." I stared at that text for so long my phone went dark. That was the moment I knew I was done. Not just done giving. Done being. Done being their safety net. Done being their scapegoat. Done being the outsider who gets called when the house is on fire, but never invited to sit at the table. But the kicker? The one that made my skin crawl? A few days before they left for the cruise, I got a call from Matt. He wanted to know if I could temporarily put $1,500 on my card for something urgent. Wouldn't say what. I told him no. He sighed and said, "Man, you're getting real weird lately. Kinda cold, don't you think?" Cold, I said. Or just finally awake? He didn't reply. Just hung up. And 2 days later, they were on that boat, champagne flutes in hand, smiling into the camera like they were the good guys. That's what made it so easy when Mom left that voicemail asking for more money. As if nothing happened. As if I didn't exist until they needed to charge something. They used my card to hold the booking. So I used my rights to cancel it. They called it betrayal. I called it balance. They came back home the next day. Not with silence, oh no. That would have been mercy. It started with a barrage of texts. Then voicemails. Then phone calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. By the time I opened my email, I had messages from my uncle in Phoenix, my aunt in Jersey, even a second cousin I hadn't seen since I was 10, all telling me how disappointed they were in me. Apparently, my parents had told everyone I'd fraudulently canceled their cruise as revenge and left them stranded like criminals. Criminals? No one mentioned that I'd paid for that cruise. No one asked why they used my name, my card, my money, and left me behind. No, I was the villain. Again. But the real explosion came that evening. I was sitting on my couch, lights low, music playing, when I heard the knock. I knew it was them. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to open the door. And there they were, all 3 of them. Dad with clenched fists. Mom with puffy eyes and a plastic smile. Matt standing at the bottom of the steps, jaw twitching like he was rehearsing a speech. "You think this is funny?" My dad snapped before I even said a word. I leaned on the doorframe. Calm. Cool. "No," I said. "I think it's justice." "You humiliated us," Mom said, tears welling again, only this time they didn't look real. "They had to escort us. Off the ship. In front of everyone. Do you know how that felt?" "Probably a little like being called an outsider by your own father," I said. Dad stepped forward. "We're your family." "No," I cut him off. "You're people I send money to out of guilt." "That's not family. That's Dad." Matt finally spoke. "You've always been bitter," he spat. "You think money gives you power? You think it means you get to punish us?" "No," I said. "But it means I get to stop funding my own disrespect." He scoffed. "You know what? We don't need you." "Oh," I said. "Then why are you here?" He didn't answer. My mom jumped in. "We were trying to include you." I laughed. "You called me an outsider." I was angry. Dad said, "People say things. And I remember every one," I said. "But don't worry. You'll remember mine too." I walked back inside, grabbed a folder off my desk, and tossed it on the coffee table in front of them. What's that? Matt asked. Receipts, I said. Everything I've paid for in the last 5 years. Every tuition bill. Every rent payment. Every electric bill I bailed you out on. It adds up to $63,478. You kept track, my mom whispered, horrified. No, I said. I started last month. Once I realized you were planning that cruise without me. My dad laughed, but it was bitter. So what? You want us to pay you back? No, I said, locking eyes with him. I want you to leave. And never ask me for anything again. Matt looked like he was about to lunge, but then boom. The twist. I warned you this would happen, a voice said behind them. They turned. It was my aunt, my mom's sister. She'd come in through the side gate, holding her phone in one hand and a stack of printed emails in the other. I tried to tell you, she said. He's not the problem. You are. What are you doing here, Carla? Dad barked. Carla stepped into the living room like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. I saw the texts, she said. The ones you sent the family. About him. About how you were finally going to cut him off once he gave you the money for the cruise. I froze. She turned to me. They planned to ghost you after the trip, she said softly. Said you were getting too controlling. Your mom said she'd block you right after the final transfer came through. I stared at my mother. She looked away. My knees almost buckled. All this time, the guilt, the shame, the begging for help, it was all just a script? You were going to cut me off, I said slowly, after I paid for everything? It wasn't like that, Mom whispered. Then what was it like? Silence. My Aunt Carla laid the final blow. They tried to bring me in on it, she said. Told me to tell you that Matt needed surgery so you'd open your wallet faster. I told them no. I sat down. Not from weakness, from exhaustion. For years I thought I was the messed up one. The outsider. The cold one. But the truth was simpler than I ever imagined. I was the only one who saw things clearly. Matt stormed out. Dad followed. Mom stayed for a second, as if she might say something. Maybe apologize. Maybe cry. But all she said was, I hope you're happy. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it wide. I'm not happy, I said. But I'm finally free. And I closed the door. This time for good. 2 days after I slammed the door, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it ring. Then came another one. And another. Finally, I picked up, annoyed, ready to snap. But the voice that greeted me wasn't family. This is Officer Reynolds, Port Authority. We spoke briefly. We need to ask you a few questions, preferably in person. My stomach dropped. He was calm, professional, but his words were tight, like he was holding something back. What's this about? I asked. There was a pause. It's regarding a fraudulent payment claim made by your parents and your brother Matthew. They stated you used their personal information to access their cruise account and cancel services without permission. My mind went blank. I didn't, I began, but he cut me off. Mr. Miller, he said, we already reviewed the booking. The card used was yours. The billing address matches your apartment. The cruise line confirmed the account was in your name. So why? They filed a false report, he said. And that makes this a bit more complicated. We'll need an official statement. I felt dizzy. They didn't just lie. They tried to burn me. After everything, they went to the police and painted me as the criminal. Just because I said no. Just because I stopped being their bank. I showed up the next morning at the Port Authority office with my lawyer friend Marcus. I brought every receipt, every email, every screenshot. Officer Reynolds didn't waste time. He laid it all out. When the cruise account was frozen, the cruise line flagged the payment issue. Your parents claimed you were impersonating them to sabotage the trip. I blinked. Sabotage? I booked the thing. I know, he said. They said you volunteered to help, but used the card to gain control. My blood boiled. That's called paying for something, not sabotage. He nodded. Don't worry. We're not pressing charges. But the cruise line is. They're suing them for breach of agreement and attempted fraud, because they filed a dispute to reverse the full charge after they'd already enjoyed the first 2 days of the trip. Unbelievable. They tried to screw me and the cruise line. Officer Reynolds leaned forward. But here's where it gets interesting. He slid a manila folder across the table. Inside, screenshots. Printed text messages. One from Matt to my mom. He thinks he's smart. Let him pay for it. Once we're on the ship, he can't touch us. Another from my mom to my dad. Let him feel useful. We'll block him once the final payment clears. The messages had been retrieved from the cruise ship's guest internet logs. They'd been using the onboard Wi-Fi under my name. Everything was stored. Everything. I sat in silence, fist clenched. All those years of helping, sacrificing, carrying them when they wouldn't lift a single finger. And their entire plan was to toss me out the moment I'd served my purpose. I wasn't their son. I was a tool. But that wasn't the worst part. Reynolds glanced at me. There's something else, he said. I debated whether to tell you, but one of the messages involved your workplace. My head snapped up. What do you mean? He passed me another printout. A message from Matt to someone named Darren. You work at his office, right? HR guy or something. You should tell them he's having mental issues. Might get him out. He's getting dangerous. I stared at the paper. Matt had tried to get me fired. He sent a message to a guy in my building, someone I knew vaguely from HR, trying to suggest I was unstable. To isolate me. Cut me off. I couldn't even speak. My lawyer friend leaned forward. Can we get copies of these? He asked. Reynolds nodded. You'll need them. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I saw everything clearly now. They hadn't just used me. They wanted to erase me. And they almost did. The next morning, I packed the last of my boxes. My lease was almost up anyway. I called my new landlord, signed the final forms online, and sent one text. To all of you, we're done. No calls. No guilt. No pretending we're family. You tried to ruin my life. You tried to ruin my job. And you lost. Don't speak my name again. I blocked every number, every email, even changed mine. It was quiet for days, until I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten. No return address. Inside was one sentence. You did this to yourself. No name. No signature. But I recognized the handwriting. Matt. The same guy who said he didn't need me. The same guy who tried to destroy me. And now, he was still blaming me. I stared at the paper. Thought about burning it. Instead, I pinned it to my fridge. Like a trophy. A reminder of how far I'd come and how far I'd never go back. It's been 6 months. I live in a different city now. Smaller, quieter. The kind of place where the coffee shop remembers your name and your landlord actually fixes things. My new apartment isn't much, one bedroom, bare walls, a couch that squeaks when I sit. But it's mine. Paid for with my money, under my name, and with no strings attached. No guilt. No voicemail bombs. No fake emergencies that sound like love. Just air. The first week after I left, I waited. I kept checking my phone like someone craving a high they knew would hurt them. But it stayed quiet. They really had let go. No apologies. No confessions. Just a clean break. It should have hurt. It didn't. Because here's the thing about walking away from people who used you. You don't miss them. You miss who you pretended they were. I stopped pretending. I got a job with better hours. I started sleeping, really sleeping, not the phone on your chest waiting for a crisis kind of sleep. I joined a boxing gym. Nothing serious, but I liked the feeling of impact, of grounding. And I started laughing again. The kind that comes from your gut, not the fake chuckle you give when your brother insults you and your dad calls it teasing. Some people would say I burned the bridge. I didn't. I just walked away from a house that was already on fire. And then the letter came. Not a threat this time. No one-line guilt grenade. This one was different. It came from an unfamiliar return address. Inside was a note. Just a few lines. Written in careful, almost shaky handwriting. You don't know me well. I'm Officer Reynolds' wife. He told me everything, how your family used you, and how come you stayed through it all. He doesn't usually talk about cases, but he couldn't stop talking about yours. He said, this man didn't just protect himself. He protected his future. I just wanted to say, I hope you know that walking away takes more strength than staying. And some of us are watching. With respect. Marlene R. I sat there, frozen, holding this little slice of the world I never expected. Someone saw me. Not because I shouted. Not because I fought. Because I walked and didn't look back. I pinned her note to the fridge, right above Matt's. 2 notes. One is poison. The other proof. Proof that I'm not crazy. That silence can be a language. That no matter how loud the guilt gets, peace always whispers louder. I haven't heard from them since. But a friend from back home told me Matt lost his job. Apparently, HR found a few strange messages he sent to other people in the office. He tried to blame me, again. No one bought it. Dad's business folded, too. Turns out, when you treat people like tools, they stop showing up when the machine breaks down. And Mom? Well, rumor has it she's telling people I cut them off without warning. That I turned cold. But I don't respond. Not with anger. Not with facts. Just silence. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can say to people who broke you is nothing at all.